My name is Nabab Hess. I'm a student teacher of the master teacher, Dr. Malachi K.Z. York, and I'll be doing my best to bring you this class today. Now, I'm not going to run through the polls. I'm assuming that the sound and everything is okay. If there are any problems with the sound or the visuals, can you just put a note in the chat and we will respond accordingly. Okay, so what we're going to do is just start off with a positive affirmation, just to allow us to connect with our ancestors for a positive experience in our class today. If you're aware of it, then please feel free to read along or chant along. If you're new to the class for the first time, it's going to be in the Sabaic language. This is the language of the Sabian. In this day and time, one of the gifts brought back to us by our ancestors by way of the master teacher, Dr. Malachi K.Z. York, is bringing us back to our original, or one of our original languages, which in this day and time is known as Musbatu. And so obviously a language connects the people to a culture. In order to be a nation, you have to have your own land. But this is the starting point, obviously, of transforming our mindset, if you want to use that terminology, into really, as I say, bringing us into a sense of us thinking in the way of our ancestors by speaking in the tones, obviously, that they gifted us. And we'll touch a little bit on that in the class today. So take it in, listen, and then we'll translate into English for full and proper understanding for most people on the call.
Nabab, Nadar, Muqtar, Naut, Muqdad, Badad, Patah, Naut, Mukhlas, Badad, Yaanuwn.
Pa Takyut.
Anuki, Jawef, Pa, Ashuk, Hem, Pa, Paut. Wu, Kalal, Ashuk, Kawun, Jawef, Neya. Anuki, Kasam, Em, Pa, Paut. Wu, Pa, Paut, Kawun, Kasam, Em, Neya. Anuki wahu amet pa paut, wu pa paut kawun wahu amet neya, nakuk kador najib amet kasam em pa paut, wu chabub amet mushkas nakuk kador kawan kalal pafaf nakuk arod jawef pa paut. Amer wasef, amer aratni kawun laye bakoy jawef ha paut. Anuki abad leye nafashni, pa paut kawun anuki, pa paut kador nakuk kador, pa paut amul nakuk amul.
Okay, so that was Partak Yud. Let's get that back in. So Partak Yud, again, usually I would say it, but they're doing it where you've got a congregational tone. You can see the the kind of nuances and complexities with the female and male voices in a tribal context, and that allows, I suppose, us to hear how we would sound in harmony, understood, as opposed to unison. So in harmony, those different tones, etc., etc. Do you understand? And I say, when we start to use our language, our tones, sometimes it starts to, freak people out or whatever. But that's primarily the programming that's been instilled from us from the monotheistic religions. And so we need to get to or be comfortable in a place where we're ready to accept new things in this day and time. You understand? This is a new doctrine, new mindset, really, for the renewal of our 24,000 year cycle. And one of the important things for us, really, as a people, is to be open-minded. Do you understand? So, and this is because of the damage that has been done by way of bad information taught to us, certainly more acutely since our people have been in the West, forcibly removed in some instances from the 14th, 15th, 1600s over into lands that were not our own, and this created, as I say, a kind of hybrid, a fake version of us as Negroids on the Garun. But let's translate into English for full and proper understanding. So we started, by saying, "Holy, holy, holy, Master, Overseer, Almighty." And then we said, "No God except Ptah, no Savior except Yaanuwn." So Ptah, as the word translates really as opener, and reflects, as I say, this physical existence really here on Earth, in terms of this design, understood, and who we are, our life form on this planet. This level of existence starts with Ptah, understood, and obviously you have different within the mind of Pa'ut. We have different types of existence. This one here, or the physical existence that we are in, experience it as we understand it to be referred to sometimes as Hu, H-U, and in the term as human being, some people use, or humin, or humin, being in the language. So Hu is the name of the mind of this type of existence within Pa'ut, and that starts for us with Ptah, the head of the nine. As you can see from, with your eyes open or your third eye open, the European grafted it, or the Mukasu grafted it into their language and changed Ptah to Peter. Yeah, P-E-T-E-R, understood? So as the opener, you understand? And so this is really important for us in our structure as the head of the nine. And then no savior except Yaanuwn, the master teacher, or Yaanuwn, as the 19th elder within the 24 elders at the end of the 24,000 year cycle. Remember that the 19th elder adopts the 25th seat, which is here on the planet Earth. Understood? So you've got 24 elders. Understood? And if you imagine the 25th seat is in the middle, so 19th at the end of the 24,000 year cycle, each elder symbolically given 1 hour. Yeah, each elder symbolically given 1 hour, obviously to convey information that's necessary to aid our transformation. So the 19th, as Yaanuwn, occupies the 25th seat at the end. If you were to draw or look at an hourglass, understood, from its side profile, but he also looked at the hourglass from above looking down, and you put 24 points of a clock, understood, yeah, surrounding this circular, let's say at a circular top, circular bottom, in terms of a conical shape meeting in the middle with a circle. That's how really to perceive it. Yeah, so the 25th seat is the bridge between our etheric ancestors, understood, and us here on Earth as their descendants. You understand? All interlinked. You understand? As their descendants or children, as we use that term. Yeah, so Partak Yud, the affirmation. Then we said, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am a part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I wish in the all expanding, as long as my wish is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is, I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. So if you want more understanding of the all expanding, or Pa'ut, or how we would maybe translate as existence, you understand that obviously the previous classes we've got into that in a lot of detail to understand that context. Really, existence really is the key, and as I say, we probably maybe touch upon it a little bit in this class. But if you want more, as I say, check out some of our previous classes. Or seek out the Partarat. There's a book called The All Expanding, going into that in some detail. Now, just very quickly then, for those maybe not joined us on the Zoom platform before. If you need to adjust your audio settings for any reason, then these options are here on the left-hand side. Comments in the chat, feedback, feel free to use the reaction buttons as well as part of your experience here today. If you've got any feedback, it's not questions, etc., feel free to select everyone as a distribution option and then place your comments in the chat as classes are going on. And then this is an interactive session, so a couple of ways to ask questions to myself today as your student teacher. So simply click on the button and raise your hand to ask a question. If you want to come through live and ask your question direct verbally, and then you'll see this message appear on the screen. You simply unmute yourself once called, and then you come to speak and ask your question directly. If you've dialed in, options are slightly different. *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute once prompted. If you're not confident or don't feel to come in and ask the question verbally, then feel free to press the Q&A button, and then you can ask your question in writing, and then our facilitator for today, Harahim Nabab Jadefrehatab, will then ask that question on your behalf. If there's some follow-up, then feel free to use the same channel to ask the follow-up question. Okay, no poll questions today, but periodically we may have recap quizzes. Don't be afraid of those quizzes, just there to enhance people's understanding, check learning, things of that nature. Yeah, so if you get it wrong, it's not a problem. It's not that we're keeping score or anything like that. It's just to make sure, as I say, you understand what we're attempting to teach you in this context. I say, so a quick introduction. I say we are United Sabians worldwide, started by who we refer to as Pa Nabab Yaanuwn in our language. Term Nabab means master, Pa, as you see there, means the, and then Yaanuwn. You understand? And the term Ya in this context here effectively is a term that prefixes when we use names of our ancestors in this context. People may use the term deities, etc., but they describe also principles, and the term Ya, it would translate into English as O. You understand? So in this context, so Yaanuwn or Yaanuwn, understood, is what you're seeing there, and because some may see that as the term Noon or Nun, as you see there with the three bowls that we talked about in the previous class. Excuse me. You understand, representing that Nu or Nun science. You understand, it's in the term Noon, N-O-O-N. You understand? Now, in actuality, born in Takoradi, Ghana, West Africa, coastal city there. Recent oil find, well, I say recent, but certainly in the 2000s, recent oil find off the coast there. So particularly thriving area now, seeing a resurgence, and that's where he was born. So from his mother's side, that Ghanaian heritage comes, as well as the Native American heritage. She was known as Fatima. Sabians are a matriarchal tribe in a tribal context. So, and this is again in line with natural nature. All of our original societies were matriarchal, not patriarchal. This came in many millions of years later down the line with a group of extraterrestrials referred to as the Anunnaki, who are responsible, or the lords and the gods and lord gods, etc., of your Bible that your Bible or their Bible that they translated and are using today. Torah being the first 5 books of that Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. You understand? So long before that, we were always matriarchal, understood? And so hence the structure of our tribe starts with clan mothers in, let's say, our Native American tribal context as Yamasee Native Americans, and so that ties us, to say, back into Ghana. We're tying it in this class today. All of our origins really start from South Africa as it pertains to us on land, but we did not descend from monkeys. Obviously, we descended from the stars, and our indigenous place of origin is actually in the waters. You understand? So when we talk about the structure of how we understand knowledge, we talk about outformation in the first instance, which is outside, obviously, of the Earth or the planet Earth's atmosphere or sphere. And then when it comes here, that becomes information, understood? And then you have another aspect beneath the waters of this planet. Now we talk about beneath formation. Understood? So our origin starts really, as I say, in the waters of this planet. Our origin here, at least I should say, starts in the waters of this planet. But whether it be outformational context, whether it be informational context, whether it is beneath formational context, it's female first. Understood? Even in energy context, it's female first. Understood? So Mary Abba Akran-York, also known as Fatima Miriam, is the mother of Dr. Malachi Kaiser-York, and as I say, arguably the most important sacred feminine in the last 6,000 years, giving birth, as I say, to who we refer to as our saviour in this day and time, bringing the science of Wu-Sabat, and Wu-Sabat means to transform information. What I say means, one of the definitions applied to it is the key of transforming information into outformation. And our understanding is that we are information. We are the people in a certain type of formation, understood, that needs to be transformed from mortals back into deities again. You understand? Or Nwep Mokwan, the same language, supreme beings. Understood, which is what we are, supreme beings. Yeah, we've been taught that we are men and women, but that's just describing obviously the physical aspect of us, not the totality of us. So Mary Abba Akran-York, you can see her here in our clan mother attire, or see her here in the clan mother attire of our tribe. Some of the sacred colours being used here: black, gold. Black is a tone, in fact, but black. Red, and so you see white and see the gold there. And we always point out, I suppose, a symbol of the lotus flower, a symbol of transformation, always associated with the female. You understand? Again, another symbol of transformation in our culture. His father, Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, where the Sudanese side of the heritage comes from, a very famous family, let's say, the Mahdi family there, taking you back to, as I say, as you see there, Sayyid Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi of the Dongolawi tribe, also known as the Fuzzy Wuzzies, taking us right back, as I say, tying into our ancient Egyptian heritage, you understand, pre-dynastic, as they classify it, as for their need to tie themselves into the vine. You understand? But it's like all the origins come from south, and we sort of migrated upwards of the continent. And one of, as I say, our the interceptions of our genes gave birth to the ancient Egyptian cultures, as it would be known today from beings from Orion and Sirius. Understood? So again, that combination, Ghana and Sudanese heritage, gives birth to the physical being, Dr. Malachi Kaiser-York. But in the renewal of our story, you have, as I say, what they refer to in ancient Egypt, or excuse me, prior to ancient Egypt, the proper terminology was Amun, Nabab, Rayay, Akhtar, obviously, or Ptah. And that's a vehicle or a vessel that allows our ancestors to speak to us or convey information necessary for us in this day and time to realign with natural nature and, as I say, connect with our ancestors once again, which is our right as a race. The Egyptians referred to that being as Tahuti, and other cultures have different names relating to this type of individual. So the Hindus talk about avatars, In Islam, they use a term called illa mutajasid, you understand, which basically means divine in the personage, you understand? But really, it's a connection showing that, as I say, from our etheric origin, our ancestors incarnating into the human form in order to, as I say, convey information to transform us from information into outformation. Understood. And say the human body has to be structured a certain way to allow these whole light beings in. And in addition, this is why certain orders on the planet were set up to keep certain bloodlines, sacred, to allow these types of incarnations in, as I say, to ensure that we were aligned or stayed aligned with our ancestors. As you can see, we are evidence of a people who are out of alignment, do you understand, and out of our own mind, you understand. We're playing Caucasian in the body of a supreme being, do you understand? So we've got Caucasian mindset, but you understand? But we're playing supreme being, the body of a supreme. So we look like our ancestors, but are far from, until Wu-Sabat came along, at least, getting into their mindset, and obviously don't speak the language anymore, which is a further thing that was put upon us to disconnect. What you have to understand is that each and every person, or these monotheistic religions, are designed, as I say, to make you subservient to other races if you're not of the ancestral lineage of their gods, prophets, so on and so forth. Understood? So this is the game that gets played. Yes, so we were happy to worship deities and gods that didn't look like us, but this was obviously only to our detriment and would lead us nowhere near to the proper ascension pathway that is destined, I suppose, within our genes. You understand? So destiny is linked to the word destination. So while you're here in the physical, what you're supposed to be learning, your true purpose, should support that ascension journey. And if your so-called religion, in inverted commas, do you understand, or way of life doesn't support it, then that's not the one for you. And they give you the illusion of choice in the Western Hemisphere. And the reality is, whilst you can choose, it's not really a real choice to make, because it just leads to idol worship. As I say, everybody must be themselves on this planet by way of their racial origin. And as I say, either you choose that or you choose a different path. And if you choose a different path other than what is destined for your race by design, what's in your DNA and what's in your genes, then you need yourself open to be used and abused by others for their benefit and for their purposes. So I won't go through all this in detail. We've got obviously other parts of the class to go into that in detail. But it was necessary, as I say, to design a methodology to remove the spell of ignorance from our people. And so this is why you see name changes, different schools, etc., being used, because this being named Nabab Yaanuwn, Dr. Malachi York, who we're going to effectively refer to as the master teacher in this class going forward, had designed a methodology to remove this spell of ignorance from our people. Understood? And so that required, as I say, using a combination, the antidote, as we would say, as you'd be familiar with, an antidote has part of the poison in the cure. So we need to trigger our own mental immune system to really flush, you understand? So we needed to be brainwashed. Not in the way that they use it, but brainwashed, because our brains were dirty, full of the filth and the misinformation and the lies, you understand, that have been communicated about us to our people, and we needed to be brainwashed. Understood? So that meant mastery of various different schools or teachings, let's say, that have been conveyed to us over time, and have been conveyed to us over time, which had helped to confuse the mind. Do you understand? So we were living, obviously, in a state of ignorance in that regard. So, as I say, you can get more into that. In you go back to future parts of this class we've done. Now I want to get into what we're going to speak about today. So we're on part 11, obviously, of this class. Just bear with me. Avert your eyes. So yeah, so just for people's information, so we went through various different schools and really to remove the kind of misinformation of the monotheistic religion, because that's all we primarily have been taught. Even if people went away from it and sought alternatives, a lot of people's understanding, even of our own culture back then, was still used or linked into, as I say, a monotheistic understanding. So even people say, "Oh well, I'm not that," maybe Pan-Africanist or things of that nature. That's not dissing those particular schools. A lot of the understanding still would be using terms like Most High or God and these types of things, having no, obviously, at least tie in to the understanding of divinity as taught by these monotheistic religions. They don't even have an understanding, a concept of Pa'ut or all. Do you understand? In this context, all, I mean, you cannot add to it, you cannot take away from it. Where would you get it from? So existence really the key, or understanding existence is really the key. Understanding the darkness is really the key. Whereas their understanding is focused on light. And when they say light, they really mean fire. You understand? Because there was no incandescent or fluorescent lighting in the 1600s, or 1500s, when these books were being translated, you understand, from other languages. So when they talk about light, they mean fire. Yeah? And ultimately, for brevity, they're talking about the sun. When they're talking about God or Most High or the highest thing in the sky, whether it's from Judaism, Christism, or into Islamism or Mohammedism, they're saying Allah, the light of the heavens and the earth, is dealing with the sun. Understood? So, and where does that link to the sun comes from? Well, it comes from your ancestors and our culture. Understood? Because the sons were our etheric ancestors. Understand? As the Nadar term that they used, or Natharu as a term that's used. And so that's where that understanding comes from. And obviously we are their physical descendants. So if you imagine our ancestors in the form of, our ancestors in the form of a gas, so the vibration down in context of water, because human beings are 71% water or liquid. So you slow down the vibration from gas, you get water. Slow down the vibration again, you get ice. Understood? In this context. So you're looking at transformational aspects of energy in that context. So the sun in its gaseous, obviously, state, you understand? This would be, it is sitting, is sitting in a liquid environment, interesting enough, called ectoplasma. That is the content, at least, of our universe. So for their understanding, Most High is the gas, the angels, as they would describe it, is the liquid, and then you've got human beings would be the equivalent of the solid. Understood? Now, in the context, we bring that into Wu-Sabat, we have the darkness, and then obviously the manifestation of things becoming some things. Understood? So in the darkness, things, 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 or no thing, not particles that don't have an atomic weight, so to speak. Then they become some things. So when they become some things, the first point, as they record it, of physical existence would be at the hydrogen atom. Understood? Hydrogen atom in combination with helium produces the burning of the sun, or the fuel for the suns, and the suns are our ancestors. And so you slow that vibration down again. We're referred to as descendants because we descended down from that gaseous state into the lowest level of vibration as physical beings. You understand? So that liquid then becomes into ice or the solid, lowest level of vibration. But we're still all of those, but all of that is obviously trapped within this physical structure. So our obviously purpose in life is to not only align ourselves with the ways of natural nature and the omniverse, but it's also to return back to the source of whence we came. You understand? So that journey is to keep transforming and ascending up. We are at the lowest level of vibration. And how you know that is because of the nutational rate of the atoms or particles within that particular abode. You understand? So we're in the lowest level, referred to as the physical abode. Okay, so let's get into where we were last month. So science and relationships, obviously we were talking about the really taking you way back to the origins of what you're referring to as men and women, the fact that you were taught that, but in our culture is referring to ourselves as men and women. We are supreme beings, you understand? And this is where we understood that man, or as it would be referred to as, is only a few steps in the divine hierarchy of things above beast. You understand? So I think it was shown in one of these slides here. Just bear with me. So we can see here that in the divine hierarchy, so we go from supreme being, we can see that men into mammal, beast like man, beast onto demon is very far down the line. Do you understand? Now we understand what to be a man is or to be a woman is, and the concept of that we capture in our Paarthurak, sacred masculine and sacred feminine. And these are roles based on physicality to some degree, which makes culturally, which helps us basically to structure how best to work a family. Do you understand? Now, in that understanding is separating out the fact that this kind of biblical idea that the woman was supposed to be a helpmate to man, do you understand, is basically a fallacy or religious fallacy written by those translators from those books who introduced, let's say, patriarchal thinking. Do you understand? The woman was never created to be man's helpmate. Women, in the context of natural nature, birthed men, not the other way around. Do you understand? There's no way scientifically in the rules of natural nature that the Y chromosome could give birth to the X chromosome. It's 5 times smaller inside. It has less genetic material in it than the X chromosome. So it's impossible, as say, even by nature's rules, for the lesser to give birth to the greater. And as we sort of give you that context, if I've got 20 pounds, I can lend English pounds. If I've got 20 pounds sterling, I can lend you anything from 1 pence, understood, yes, to 20 pounds sterling. 1 pence is 1/100th of a pound. Yeah, so I can lend you anything from 1 penny as a starting point to 20 pounds. I cannot lend you 20 pounds, 25 pounds, excuse me. Yeah, because I don't have it. Yes, so but if I have 25 pounds, I can lend somebody 20 pounds. Understood? So a woman who is a double X chromosome can produce the Y chromosome, which is smaller. She cannot produce, in the same, greater. So the male, which is XY, can't produce the double X. It's an physical impossibility. Yeah. So this poor understanding, yes, came from, as I say, the Anunnaki, who were patriarchal, and that's why their religious books in their monotheistic religions are referred to God as a he, not even an it. Do you understand? So that's where that thinking came in, and obviously the suppression of the female. So when we're looking at redeveloping cultural understanding, yes, by design, we all have different physical attributes by design, you understand? And our culture may emphasize some of those things or reflect that, but that's how you work together to produce a productive society or productive family situation. Not that one is subservient to the other, do you understand? Which is, I say, what's being really propagated and still is today. Some of the confusion that you see with a lot of stuff going through social media is this kind of pseudo-religious hybrid of what a man should do, what a woman should do, a submissive woman, all these various different, words that are used really to cause conflict between males and females, which really has got nothing to do with how our culture was structured. Do you understand? That's not to say that, over time, even in our culture, women weren't suppressed, over years. But as you see, nature is restoring back the woman back to power. You understand? As I say, we always matriarchal in terms of leadership and the way our society was structured, because it works in line with nature's system. Do you understand? So even energy in that context, the mother of energy in this context is something called basic energy. So basic energy gives birth to energy. So represents that other or mother principle. Do you understand? Or stillness into motion. Do you understand? So that comes out, it's birthed from something. And you see that principle in the female today. We say that to say is that, as I say, incorrectly, as I say, that understanding has filtered through, shaped our understanding today, and now both in the 9 and the 6 understanding. So if we look at it in the positive context, so slightly, we understand what they represent, but in us as human beings, the 9 represents the mental aspect of ourself, and the 6 or sex represents the physical aspect of us. Understood? So our 9 mind should rule our 6 or sex body. Do you understand? So because the 6 is dealing with the physical aspect of us. Understood? And so mind must rule the physical, or must have control of our desires. Yeah. So both are extremely powerful. So 9 obviously represents our mental strength, and then the 6 represents our physical strength. And this is why mind has to rule over body, because we see the misuse of the sex force in this day and time. And if we understand the rules of natural nature, we understand that when a people are in a situation such as ourselves, at the lowest of the low as they have us in this society today, they remember for every aspect of pleasure one experiences, they must experience the equal amount of pain. So when you're at the bottom, obviously, the ghetto heaven seems to run deep in us. So we want to obviously have a lot of sex, or the pleasure from sex, to avoid, the hardships, not avoid, but to maybe alleviate some of the hardships that we may be going through. But the more sex, which leads to more children, the more burden. You understand? Because obviously now, as in your come up, if you have children at the wrong time, have to be looked after, obviously a financial drain on time, so on and so forth. And so it makes the come up a lot harder. Understood? So you have to understand some of these sciences. Obviously children, of course, are the future, and you need to have children in order to continue one's legacy. But having children at the right time, having children or producing children that are more planned in or delivered in a more optimized way, with people who are compatible with each other, obviously it's clearly the ultimate goal. You understand? Otherwise you don't know what you're birthing. And so, and we don't apply that to other things that we do. You understand? If you're cooking food or whatever, some people are, at least, you should be cognizant of the ingredients that you're using in order to deliver the meal that you're trying to produce. Do you understand? It has to be baked a certain way. Maybe the ingredients have to be prepared a certain way in order for the thing to taste like what you want it to taste like, or it to taste in its optimum way. So you wouldn't put, same with cars, you wouldn't put the wrong type of fuel in your car in order for it to be able to work correctly. But obviously, when it comes to inherent stuff within us, we seem to do everything backwards. And so it's getting us to a point where, at least from a knowledge perspective, we're informed enough to make the right kind of decisions. And this is what we've been dealing with, at least in this aspect of these latter part of the aspect of this class, is dealing with the science of relationships as opposed to the art of them. Do you understand? So check out, as I say, the earlier parts, I think probably from about 8 going upwards, but if you want to start from 1, that's great as well, up to where we are today. So we went through all this. I'll get to, stop waffling, let's get to where we were last time. So concept of a soulmate is where supreme beings, male and female, or female and male, come together to produce supreme beings. You understood? And as you know, the kind of attribute of producing a supreme being is that, or when soulmates come together to produce supreme beings, or star children in that context, is that the child in actuality doesn't look more like one parent or the other. The child, in fact, is a sort of perfect mixture of the attributes of the both parents. Do you understand? So they look like both parents, and so merged together, as opposed to one looking like the mother or one looking like the father. And so it's one of the attributes of children being born of soulmates. Yeah, and so it's not a click your fingers thing necessarily, and then people are sort of betrothed and in love with each other in life. It takes work, you understand, but it is related to a coming together where, as I say, the compatibility is obviously very important. Okay, so let's get back to where we were last week. So we had explained to you, say, about this correlation between how we come from this aspect of supreme beings of things, and we're subject to the rules of things. So all this is taking place in the darkness. So the cause and effect, in the sense before things manifested into light, the rules of things becoming became, and you understand that the rules of existence must have 3 principles in their: space, matter, and time. They are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other when we're talking about existence. You understand? And so male and female obviously representing those different aspects in that journey. We referred it, as I say, back to sound. Yeah. So this relationship between what one would describe as space, do you understand, and you understand matter occupying the space, and how, let's say you're thinking about a song or a tune, you understand, it is really non-sound and sound, the correlation between that. If you're talking about the drum beat or somebody making a drum sound, the space is important, but also the sound occupying that space is important. And it's the mind, you understand, or time, you understand, or the mind as time, that brings those things together in perfect unison. Do you understand? And so magical things then happen as a result of bringing those things together. Yeah. So us as things within existence, understood. The woman, excuse me, obviously representing matter or material. Let's go back to the other one. You understand? The male in this instance, representing the fact that we exist, or from things, that journey of those particles now being put into order, you understand, by having purpose, understood. And so the woman as the material, as I say, that coming into unison with each other, but that mind is a constant and time is a constant in this context. And in order for mind or the mental to express itself forward, coming from a space of stillness into motion, it then expresses itself through time. So mind and time are synonymous in this context, you understand, in the bringing together of this perfect union. This is why when you see in this next one, you see the mind child, and people, they've heard, maybe some of you have heard in the Wu-Sabat doctrine, that your child is the one that brings your parents together, or the child is one that brought the parents together. This is because, remember, it is the mind aspect that is bringing together space, absolute space, and absolute matter coming together, you understand, to allow the mind to continue to express itself going forward under the rules of existence for us, which is being, becoming, became. Yeah, going through these stages of growth: being, becoming, became. You understand? And the rules of things, which is what we are as supreme beings, or one of the rules of things that applies to us, is that part and whole can be the same. You understand? So a thing and all things are the same, which is why in the context of producing another supreme being, you're able to donate part of yourself forward, understood, to allow that mind child, or the mind, to express itself in the form of a child. You understand? So, which is probably the most important aspect of divinity to us. Sorry, let me just go back. Yeah, remember we asked the question, why aren't these our kind of holy symbols that we're wearing around our neck? Because this is where you as part are able to know, but it's you as the whole, isn't it? So the sperm in a male is part, but it also represents whole, because that's his whole design in this aspect. As for the female, that is a whole design. Do you understand? Going forward. And so when the two come together, you understand? So this being, and then the material necessary, but also the space necessary to allow growth, when they come together, then obviously we've got the ability now to form a child, which, let's say, forward is both male and female. You understand? But then allows the mind, or the mental aspect of the mind, to now express itself in this child. So we've got an individual portion of the mind from the mental now expressing itself in, or continuing to express itself in, the journey of this new individual. Do you understand? And obviously we showed you that before. All of us, you understand, linked to the mental, you understand, outformational context, you understand, and then the individual portion that is projected down into the brain, we're referring to that as our mind. Yeah, so mind, M-I-N-D, understood, but you replace it. What you're really talking about is your individual portion of that mental reservoir. You understand? And it's probably no coincidence, or it is a coincidence, that the word mind, you take off the E or the D, understood, you get the word min. Yeah, so min as one of the expressions of Amun. You see a min, upright man, shown with an erect phallus, you understand, and showing the delivery device or mechanism, yes, as we has expressed. Yeah, so that is allowing through your ka'a, you understand, one of your spiritual aspects of you, yeah, which draws down, or allows your body then to draw down from the mental reservoir your individual mind. Understood? And so you producing supreme beings allows our mental, understood, to continue to express itself forward, understand, as supreme beings. We have that link which people are referring to as soul. Yeah, so that mental link that is being described, understand, this is what we're referring to as soul. Yeah, and one important thing that we showed you about, I think it was in the Holy Tablets. Yeah. Something happened there? Okay. In the Holy Tablets, yeah, Tablet 1, just a little bit of a refresh. Here, maybe some older terminology would go from 121. He says, it is formed on the plane where the mental spark is formed. 122. The shell of the spiritual body of Cadman, old terminology there for Adam. Obviously, I suppose you upgraded that to Egyptian terminology, you say atum. The rule of Nasut, so the realm of physical beings. Again, atum, atun, amun, or you'd say Huhi, Hika, and Sia. You talked about it earlier as the three abodes, isn't it? Physicals, solid, liquid, and gas. You understand? Three major triad. Yeah? So the lowest level of that is the abode of human beings. Now, 123, a spark of divine consciousness. 124, leading to the development of the human soul. 125, being in the likeness of the, we're going to use the term Nathar, because this was written as part of the development schools, and Reye, you understand? The most glorified, exalted, as a child of the Natharu, yeah, if we upgrade this terminology. So, this idea or concept of children, you understand, is for our understanding in this context, understood, is that is expressing in that context part. You understand? That's the concept of child, not always in the context of male and female coming together. You understand? But the concept of child, you understand, is where we break down now as whole, understood, into part. You understand? Whole into part. Yeah, that is also reflecting child. You understand? Or you as whole becoming part. You understand? That is a child. That's you, or arguably a clone of you. You understand? As the original, now becoming parts. You understand? Or offspring or offshoot off of the original. Describing that as child. Yes? Now, it says this spark of consciousness, 126, 127, this mental spark that radiates a part of itself to the planes below. 128, it projects down to the spiritual plane and forms what you call, in sense of what we call the soul. So what that's describing, and what we're trying to really make the point, is that the link there still remains. Yeah, it's the same way what you would describe in that context, isn't it, as family, so that you're related to each other. You understand? You're not physically attached to the person, but there's a connection, isn't it, which you would refer to as family. Well, in the spiritual context, or etheric context, maybe a better way to describe it, in fact. You understand? And that mental link is still there. So even though as a people, you understand, we are at the lowest level of vibration, that mental link, obviously, from the world of things, or when we were no thing, you understand, what they describe as nothing, that link to the mental origin still there. Now, can it be cut off? Yes, it can. You understand? So, as we expressed before, if you're not the one making decisions, and you allow yourself to be subject to external or even internal influences where you're not driving, you're not the head of the ship, you're not the person driving the car. You understand? So, a person addicted to drugs or alcohol. You understand? Or in the religious context, you're not living as you're living in the image and the likeness of somebody else, then that can cause you to lose your soul, or the link then to break. Understood? Can it be restored? Yes, the same way like we have this internet connection that we're having this conversation and communicating over today. That link, that etheric link, can drop, can't it? And it can be restored back again, putting the right type of fixes in place. Understood? So this is what you have to understand when you're talking about soul. Now, do all races on the planet have that link back to the original? No, they do not. You understand? Some never have it or never will have it. They can only get it through mixing necessarily with those with soul. And if you look at the blackness, as you would describe it, as your melanin, for those who have melanin on this call, or it's in its abundance, its closeness to the so-called, what they call the night sky, which is really existence, that's showing you that connection to that. You understand? Because it's the, obviously, culmination of all colors, isn't it? Within existence, gives you the tone of blackness. You understand? So it's describing the whole. Yes? And then obviously different colors or hues within that will describe the parts. But we represent the whole as a people. And the Negroid or Nagaru, you understand, has the whole. We gave birth to the other races. Is that an egotistical thing? No, it's dealing with facts. But the problem, what made it egotistical, is because other races and other sub-races want to cover over those facts and not accept it as everybody's reality. Do you understand? Because if we were dealing with the fact of everybody being the human race, everybody would accept the reality that they came from Africans, you understand? They came from the black race, representing the whole, and others came along after us would represent a change from the whole, in terms of partial destruction of original creation, do you understand? Which is basically saying less potent. If you descend down from that gaseous state, where we get that change, you've got less potent gases or less potent formula when you start to go down the ether levels to 6, 5, 4, so on and so forth, as opposed to Nagaru, who represents the whole, as 9 ether. You understand? So the most powerful form of energy in existence, existing anywhere, everywhere. Understood? And then it changes, because ether becomes old, and ether even dies. And in that transformation, let's say we get a change. Yeah, one is known, you understand, as creation, that describes growth, and then we get partial destruction of original creation that represents change. You understand? Or a weakening of those forces. That's what destruction means, changing in form or system, at least in Wu-Sabat. So check out the previous classes. We'll get into what we want to talk about today, which we're getting more into the physical, genetic descriptions. Yeah, so very quick overview for everybody on the call. Now, so I think importantly, know yourself. That has a sort of quite a double entendre. It has a double meaning. In so far as people may associate that statement with, learn about Black history or your culture, where you come from, yourself, and all those things are absolutely valid. However, in the context that when the master was saying, know thyself, teacher was expressing to us, know thyself, it was to learn how the human body works. You understand? Know how it's structured, know how your organs work, etc., etc. And the reason for that is because, obviously, as you would have learned if you spent some time in these classes, that we are a universe. You understand? Who came from a dual verse, which is our mother and father, understood? So we are a universe. If you want to understand the sciences of the universe, you must study self, yes, and the relationship. And what we've, I think, really attempted, maybe successfully, one would say, over these previous parts, is showing you that correlation, you understand, and patterns of that which is in the heavens, understood, is the same, as what it is here on Earth, or in space or outer space and inner space. You understand, the rules are the exact same. This is why we, as the ancient Egyptians, or Kadem Mokmatu, understand, we built heaven on earth. We showed our relationship, continuous relationship with us as human beings, their terrestrial sons, and our relationship with that etheric parents as the celestial sons, you understand, and maintain that relationship until we found ourselves in a state of ignorance, where others forcibly mixed in with our seed and our connection was broken, leading to a loss of memory, you understand, or amnesia, one of the aspects of the different spells which have troubled our people. So one of the aspects of breaking that in Wu-Sabat is us coming back into knowledge of who we are and knowing how your body is structured and how it works and how that correlation between the heavens, you understand, and us here on Earth, how that works and how that link is again restored. Now, you see there Arashta or Asset, one who's the throne, and how her name has been grafted into different people's cultures. But the throne she sits on, obviously, is the one that a mother would sit on to breastfeed her child. And we see here the symbol, the Tet symbol, which one of its meanings is it represents the blood in human beings and also represents the little people that we all came from, insofar as the Sands people in South Africa, understood? And here we can see the symbol of regeneration, see the lotus flower and the little person inside there representing the blood. So we can see, what does that look like? Okay, well, symbolically, she is showing there the menstrual cycle, understand, in the female, and the fact that it's a renewal cycle, a flushing out of impurities, you understand, and we're showing her rebuilding herself, you understand? So, a very powerful aspect or attribute of being female, which religion trashed, you understand, and sort of brought in this unclean issue, you understand, which won't go into too much detail today, but check out Partarak, unclean issue, you understand, to deal with this, the stigma associated with the menstrual cycle in the monotheistic religions and their ignorance. Not understanding is a key aspect of transformation, do you understand? A woman renewing herself through that monthly cycle, which also ties into our link to the heavens, because her menstrual cycle is tied into the 4 phases of the moon, you understand, showing that lunar and solar biological connection. So this is where cosmic entities have a effect on the human body, you understand, on our biology. So that, as we can see there, remember that mental link we talked about, and how when it was, or it is restored, you understand, we have a direct link to existence, you understand. In fact, it's us projecting a part of ourselves down, obviously, from that mental state. Others do not have that or come from that origin because they don't have the apparatus. They wasn't from those original forces or sources of creation in that regard. Now, so we're interested in the cause and effect, and that's what we've been talking about, as we've shown you what is happening in the darkness. And so before things, as I say, manifested themselves into the light. So let's get into a little bit about structure of races, and then move down to us as male and female. Now, I'm trying to think where this is from. This is from a book called, actually called Physical Ethers. Yeah, and in verse 3, it talks about the records of all that was to become on this project, Sector 24, of those humanoids with 24,000 genomes. Yeah, so they use the term there, Zadad Tapapat. Yeah, so this is logging events in our story. So records. Now, one important things about us is that, and importantly as well about the woman through mitochondrial DNA, is that the importance of the woman is because she's keeping, isn't it, the records or of our race, or at least the genetic records of our race, is kept through the mitochondrial line when she has a daughter. You understand? So that generational link is passed on through the mitochondrial DNA. You understand? So the records are unbroken chain, which is why you have to have a daughter in order to carry on your lineage or the lineage. You understand? At least in the physical context. Now, if you remember the bee named Tahuti with the head of the ibis bird and the quill, so to speak, was keeping the records, you understand, were known to keep the records in ancient Egypt of all of our activities, whatever we were doing, so forth and so forth, was well recorded on the walls, you understand, to last over time. So record keeping is always an important part of our culture, understood? And actually, when you look at the term, yes, administration, you understand, you see the word min in there, you understand, as this delivery device or mechanism, you understand? Administration, you understand? So when we talk about our connection to the sun, yeah, the atum, atun, amun, and obviously in the darkness, anun, yeah, and then we add the sun, it becomes atum reye, amun reye. Understood? Yeah, anun reye. So because the atum is describing the position, when the sun is in that position, then it becomes reye, atum reye. You bring them together. So the link, remember, say in the context of amun, the delivery mechanism is min. So when we add min, you understand? So when we add min, yeah, then now we're keeping the records of who we are. Do you understand? And the various different changes. Obviously, in the context, it's all recorded in the mental reservoir. And even our existence, remember, your physical structure, your physical body is recording every waking moment of your existence. You understand? All recorded in our genes, or 24,000 genomes, as it's recorded here, as well as our subconscious mind. Yeah. So, understanding, I suppose, different records within us as human beings. I'm not going to go through all of these. I just wanted to pick out a few slides here from a slightly different class. But yeah, I suppose we have the word sajal in Sabaik, and this is referring to your individual record, yes, which is recorded on these kind of crystals or discs. They use the word narad, yes, like a disc made from crystal inside us as human beings. And as I say, recording your very moment that you came into existence. So each human being is sitting on what they call a time continuance liner. And this disc is very important because in something referred to as a dimensional shift, not getting into that in loads of detail today, but it's a way in which, as I say, human beings, or us as human beings, our whole existence is recorded, and in actuality can be taken, you understand, and deposited in another human body as one of the ways of us avoiding death. Do you understand? So very important. And as you remember, these discs or dice, this can be burned out in a class. I think Who Came to Right the Wrong, the master teacher talks about these as magnetic particles. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this type of dice disc, very important. So just for this understanding, you've got this time continuous liner from your point of inception, you understand, to birth and beyond, obviously until you die. And so you have to understand, all of your records are kind of kept on this, or your experiences, I should say, are kept on this disk. So much like a hard drive in a computer, yes, that hard drive oftentimes can be taken if the computer or the outer structure gets damaged for any reason, or you want to, I don't know, whatever, upgrade, whatever the case may be. You simply take the hard drive out, if it's able to be removed, you understand, and you put it in a new shell or a new structure. This is the same type of issue here that we have, we're able to beat death, as I say, through something that is dimensional shift. So we can be transported through space and time, yes, or the information can be transported on this disk through space and time, you understand, to another location and placed within another physical body, which is you. Do you understand? So just to understand that in that context. Now, genome, so is the word used, I suppose, in this context to describe the whole of our 24,000 genomes is how we use the term genome. Now, the word chromosome is also used. So human beings have 46 chromosomes. Now, just because terminology is used doesn't mean that there's a famous saying, I think, I'm not sure if Harat and Nabab read it this time around, but it's famous saying, just because they name a thing doesn't mean they know what it is. So the term chromosome, for example, is not really describing what the thing is. It describes basically the dye that was used by scientists studying genes in the laboratory, and in order to highlight what they were looking at, they used to insert dye into a petri dish, and so that's where the word chromosome came from. Yeah, because it means chromo, color, some means body. Do you understand? So it's not really saying to you what the thing is. You understand? Even though maybe definitions apply to the word, etc., etc. So this is why, as I say, do they really know what they're talking about? You understand? In this context, they're still learning. But when we look at the term genome, yeah, you can see it's a composite of two words in there. G obviously pertains to Earth, isn't it? Geometrics, geology, you understand? Geography. Yeah, so G, which is Greek, but the Greeks got that from the Anunnaki, you understand, or Sumerians in that context, because they had the word ki, which you can see spelled sometimes QI in English or KI, obviously, as in Anunnaki. Yes, the end, the key bit at the end relates to Earth. You understand? And then nome means place, or it describes place. So they talk about in the dynasties, you get the gnomes, you understand? 23 and 23 gnomes of Upper Egypt and gnomes of Lower Egypt. Yeah, so 23 chromosomes coming together, if you think about it, in sort of male and female in that context. That's what they use the term gnome. The actual word is the word in Sabat, it's the word sipat, S-I-P-A-T. Yes, sipat. And the symbol of the sipat, as we've shown you, I think, in class before, is if you look at the X-Men symbol that they wear on their belts, yeah, in those movies, yes, the circle with the X in the middle, sort of cut out, that is the hieroglyphic symbol for Sipat or gnome, interesting enough. Understand? And so actually structured into Lower and Upper Egypt, but their names Hut or Hatat Ba'ata Pata and Hatat Ka'a Pata. You understand? House of the soul of Pata. You understand? Or house of the spirit of Pata. You understand? So the coming together of spirit and soul. So one aspect, remember, of our spirit, as we talked about earlier, is describing how the mental link is formulated, do you understand? Or the mental child is born. And the other aspect of you have two souls and two spirits. Remember, the other word for spirit, which I use the word nafash in Sabaic, is dealing with your personality. Yes, but your personality arises from your genes, basically. Well, that's where it's stored, at least, or those characteristics of you are stored in one's genetics. Understand? So the way in which we structured our cities or our society, remember, replicated those three kind of states. Yeah. Here we see the darkness, understand, which is the realm, that nothingness. We see the realm of suns, yeah, so everything's birthed out of sons. So 9 ether beings created sons, excuse me, and birthed our universes. So you've got the realm of sons within the darkness. And then what's the third part? Or the third part is the realm of human beings. You understand? What's the realm of human beings? Yes, we all living on planets, but realm of human beings also describing the space, which is the physical body. You understand? So there's a correlation in the numbers, there's a correlation in the patterns, there's a correlation in the structure. Understand? Which all nicely aligns. Let's say in Wu-Sabat, with factologists, ontologists, and third aspect, numerologists. So interested in the science of numbers and the correlation within what is shown in the maths. Yeah, and so remember, you see this word gnome here. So genome is what they're showing here. And then we understand, yes, we came from what? Those little people in South Africa, you understand? Who they refer to as Patahites or Tahites. Yeah, they falsely refer to them as pygmies today. And different races have pygmies of different types and kinds and different races. Now, importantly, obviously, we've migrated up. Migrated, you understand? Obviously, we know the Nile starts in South Africa, and obviously we've migrated upwards. And one of the places we stayed is we produced, obviously, this pre-dynastic, Nile culture. You understand? Referred to as ancient Egypt or pre-dynastic ancient Egypt. You understand? But all of it's based around the structure of, what's out there in space, as well as the human body. Now, obviously we came from the little people, and as you can see it from the words, if you're looking closely, yes, remember they have the gnomes that people put in gardens, and they spell it Gnome. Yeah, I think there's a movie with the kids movie called Romeo and Juliet, something like that. And it's about gnomes. Yeah, so them putting gnomes in a garden, little people in a garden, ties back into our story. But it's the same word, isn't it? If you spell gnome and you were to say it, I suppose, phonetically, you say G-gnome. Yeah, but that's gnome as in, as I say, these little people on Earth, yeah, as a place or space to allow genes to express themselves. Do you understand? So the human body is a place, isn't it, allowing our genes or chromosomes to express themselves. Do you understand? And, I suppose, which came first, man or chromosome? Do you understand? Excuse me. In that sense, is man studying chromosomes, or is chromosome studying man, or using chromosomes studying man or perfecting man in order to be able to study itself? Do you understand? So which came first? And where is the true intelligence coming from? Understood? Yeah, because we have been taught, to think that in our larger size, that we are the intelligence, and maybe ignoring the stuff to where we came from. And Holy Tablets was one of the things that blew that perception away, because it really caused us as Sabians, you understand, or black people or whatever, to start to look, when they talked about our ancestors referring to human beings, they would start to say, well, but be describing a single cell amoeba, where we came from when we were first in the waters. Do you understand? So to see that as a human being, yeah, the fact of the matter is that now through technology, somebody will show you a picture of an ultrasound and show you a picture of the fetus, and you understand that that's you. But what we don't do, for example, is we're not looking at the sperm and the ovum and say, well, that's me. We know it's us, but, you know what I mean? And we think, oh, that's, in that context, oh, that's me. That's shouldn't I have a picture? If we were technologically that advanced, I should have a picture of my actual sperm, you understand, in terms of where I came from, and the actual ovum that produced me. Do you understand? That would be the ultimate, family kind of photo, is the actual sperm. Oh, that was me. Well, that was me. And then they've come together to form you as one. So we were in two separate places, or two separate parts, then now fuse together to become one. But we don't really see that, if we're honest. We don't see that as sacred. And we don't see that as our origin. And let alone us even talking about our mental origin before it even comes into the sperm and the ovum in that regard. So point being made here really is that structurally you see that our story sort of confirms itself insofar as you can see where they've stolen the understanding from, and why they've named certain things a certain way, which ties back into, as I say, our story, and see certain patterns in there of what one may describe as the cover-up. So, obviously donating sex cells in the 23rd. So you donate these, obviously part of your donation or part of you. Remember, you donate, in the woman's case, it's always going to be XX. In the case of man, they're going to be donating an XY, understood, and depending, whether the man had, so if the man had more iron in his body than zinc, understood, he's going to donate, in his part, he's going to donate the X chromosome with the woman's X. So they're going to have a daughter if the depositing of that sperm leads to conception and the child's born. If he had more zinc in his body than iron at the time, obviously, of the ejaculation, then he's going to donate the Y chromosome and they're going to produce a male child. Understood? So when we understand the science, the master teacher taught us this back in the sort of early 90s, the cause and effect means it's not really a mystery of what should be taking place. Remember, it's outformational programming or outintelligent programming from areas that we can't see. You understand? Or at least, so we're limited in this context by our technology. But when we were obviously in tune with our Nathar, then clearly we had a greater understanding of, not only our place, but what came before us, and obviously what would proceed after us in our understanding of the now. You understand? So really what takes place in the darkness and how it's going to manifest itself into the light. So you're limited really by your technological approach. But you must have an appreciation, of the darkness. This is what we're talking about. Darkness is not evil to us. You understand? It's actually where our origin is. You understand? Where we exist. Now, you can see here the Y chromosome is significantly smaller than the X chromosome, showing and say that this did not give birth to this. Yeah. So I won't go through this in too much detail, but you're understanding, obviously, we build in heaven and earth, maintaining that link to the heavens is part of our culture, you understand? And really describing, understand, that birth story here, symbol from the Orion star constellation gave birth, or this is the extraterrestrial symbol from the Orion star constellation. What do we see here? We see sun, we see water, and we see the symbol for earth. So 3 principles here needed for life. And then in Sirius, interesting enough, so this is associated with, or the Orion star constellation is associated with Asar, obviously as a male. And then the female is associated with Sirius. So we see that it represents the eye, or the symbol of the eye there in a triangle. So again, we can see our correlation. There's 3 principles there in that triad. Context, person, place, and things. But the eye is the window to the what? The eye is considered the window to the soul. So again, bridging between 2 worlds, isn't it? Yeah. And what we understand, look at those ancient maps that we were given of our ancestors, that the 19th galaxy and the 18th galaxy border onto each other, and Sirius is the gateway. Do you understand? So the woman, again, you can see all this correlation. The woman there represents the bridge between 2 worlds. The world that we came from, You understand? And the world that we are being born into. You understand? And we think about it, we come into this world head first. So one of the questions might be, well, we come to this world upside down and have to learn now to adjust in the physical and walk the right way up. But we came in head first. So in our corresponding world, overstood, was that the right way up? And now when we come here, we got to learn now to walk in the opposite. Do you understand? So correlation there to be understood. Many mysteries around the Sirius star constellation, which we did explore in some detail in the earlier parts of this. Yeah, so talking about our divine origin. So in the physical, Project 24 describes, I suppose, the development of human beings, at least in our current form, as it sits today. So remember, we are evolutionary, as some describe us as evolutionary Patahites, because we're not the 5'4" and 4'5" of excuse me, of those original Sands people. We're taller than that now as a result of mixing of genes, so on and so forth, that's come later down the line. But Project 24 is describing the seeding of this planet as it sits now, in its redesigned form. As you remember, the crash of what they called the Manjet of Ray or Nibiru, where the planet was a lot larger, and now obviously excuse me, in its sort of 24,896 miles in circumference. The planet was a lot larger previously. Slightly different moon, was in a different configuration. So it had to be restored after the crash. So Project 24 obviously is describing the seeding of the planet, obviously in as it stands today. Now, the manifestation of that was obviously 12 etheric entities from Orion, 12 etheric entities from the Sirius star constellation, and the first physical manifestation of that was conjoined twins, but then separated out into neutral gender beings. You understand? So some of those configurations would be XYX or double XY, understand, or YXY. You understand? So a hermaphrodite, as you know, is a in the body of a woman, understood, but has the spirit, for lack of a better word, of a male. You understand? And so therefore is double gendered. You understand? So double gender being or neutral gender being. Understand? But in the body of a female, and the hermaphrodite is the exact opposite. So the body of a male, do you understand, but internally has the sort of female spirit, they might refer to it as, or hormonally. So they're both neutral gender beings, and the benefit of that to them is that if a single gender being, so a male or female, can only perceive the vibrational particles of the abode which they're in. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, this is the physical abode, the lowest level of vibration. You have 9 abodes, understand? And how you know this to be the physical abode is by the nutational rate. So nutation describes a nodding, you understand, of atoms or particles. So, and it doesn't matter really what size. So it could be, you describe an atom, or you could be the size of a planet. All of the physical composition within what is called the physical abode all nutate, or they nod. So it's a nodding or moving really of an axis. You understand? All nutate exactly the same rate. You understand? So when you go, say, plane of force, the next abode, or something I describe, then they go spiritual abode, mental abode. How you would know the difference is because you would get a change in nutation. There's no force in existence anywhere that can change the nutational rate, you understand, of the composite parts of that particular abode. So all physical things that we see, you understand? That's all planets, all things we see are of that physical abode. Now, I say a female or a male, so single gender being, can only perceive the abode they're in. The attribute maybe of a person who is hermaphrodite or hermaphrodite is that it can perceive more than one abode. You understand? And hence referred to as gatekeepers. Yes, because they're able to detect gateways that allow the transition from one abode to the next. Is one of the characteristics of Nabab Yaanuwn, able to perceive more than one abode and train others to do the same, or these golden children in the culture, you understand, which say been grafted into concepts in other religions, Messiah and all these different terminologies. But its origin comes from the golden child, you understand, as you saw, Tut Amun, referred to as the golden child, but it is actually plural, golden children, you understand? And these golden children are especially, formulated children born in nature, very, very unique. In this day and time, certain group of children were sent here, born after the 1970. Other cultures, they've got other names for them, but it relates to us, golden children, and they're able to perceive, or can be trained, I should say, to perceive more than one abode. And this is important. I'm not going to get to loads of detail, but it's important of realigning our ancestral energy with our physical structure, you understand, as human beings, you understand? So our physical structure is aligned with our ancestral energy, and we provide a conduit to realign that energy back where it should be vibrating at the right ether range or level. So our people as a race, for example, if it's naturally happened, we would not exist on from 6 ether below. Yeah, we should only be existing at 7, 8, and 9 ether, because that is our family ether levels of vibration. When we have found ourselves at the lower ends, then it means that we could be subject to the use or abuse by lower forces that feed off of our etheric energy. So part of the role of the golden children was to be trained or taught by this Amun Nabab Reactor to because that being vibrates across more than one of these abodes, and therefore is able to discern one abode from another. Understood? And the children, by being taught, then are able to correlate. So if I can, because we are all a composite of the whole 9 abodes as Nagaru, or Negroids. We're a composite of all of the 9 abodes, but do not remember, you understand, or we're ignorant of what the vibrational rate is for each of the different abodes. So therefore you can't transform up and down the scale because you have no knowledge of what the vibrational rate is of these different abodes. Yeah, but a golden child has that capability, you understand? And by way of that can then draw out our ancestral energy out of these lower abodes and place them where they're supposed to be. You understand? So this is something referred to as the name's gone out of my head for a second, but it's a certain program, you understand, which basically describes this approach, you understand, or describe what I've just described to you about realigning our astral energy where it's supposed to be, so it cannot be used as an etheric battery for lower forces, you understand? So this is part of the complex corrections that have to be done, understood, at the end of this 24,000 year cycle, you understand? So race and ancestral alignment obviously must be restored and corrected, understood? Yeah, in that regard. Now, long way around of saying that they vibrate higher than normal human beings and are also able to detect gateways within existence that basically where they can see how one can traverse one abode to another, traverse dimensions, etc. Hermaphrodites can perceive these gateways. I see. Any questions? I've been going on for a while.
There are no questions.
Hand raised.
There are no questions currently. There appears to be an anomaly at the top of the screen. There's a grey panel that seemed just at the very top portion that I can see. I'm not sure whether you're aware of it.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I thought somebody had their hand raised. I thought I saw a hand raised. All right, Nabab.
Let's have a look. Yes, somebody does appear to have their hand raised. It's Batar Amun-Raye. You have your hand raised. Would you like to pose a question? If so, I will allow you to speak. If you just...
While we're waiting for the questioner, Raye Ha-Achet. That's what I'm going to Raye Ha-Achet is a term that sorry, still there?
It appears that the question, you have your hand raised. Okay. Okay, I'm going to, Okay, now we have a couple of questions. One from Jean. I am not sure if I got the question right. How does our blood relate to this? O, B, etc.
How does our blood relate to this issue here, which we're talking about? Is that the question?
I can only.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it would. I would have thought so.
Yeah, maybe a bit more clarity. Obviously, we have original blood types. Probably going to get into that. There's a bit we're going to talk about compatibility. So maybe I'll leave your question, Jean, to go to that in a bit more detail. Hopefully, we get into it today, if it's not next week. But obviously, our configuration of blood type is O naturally, so that's I suppose that would tie into what we are. But you have different blood types, and you have blood types which are designed in terms of the rhesus range, which are designed to eliminate O. You understand, at a cellular level. So they've been introduced, to say, deliberately to wipe out certain races. You understand, a form of, I suppose, maybe we call it genetic warfare in that regard. So obviously, when we were the first people, we would have all been of the same compatible blood types. So evidence of the different types is because, say, different extraterrestrials have come along, created beings in their image and after their likeness with different chromosome configurations, excuse me, which has introduced diversion in the genome, some of which is compatible and some of which is not. Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay.
Put that in the top. Raye Ha-Achet, Raye Hara-Achet. This is the program that describes the realignment of our ancestral energy with our genes. Understand? Yeah. And what the golden children would be responsible for helping to resolve. Other questions? Go ahead.
Yes. The next question is from Judith. The question is, so the conjoined male twins, in the new actual fact, who was the serpent in the garden? What were they?
Unfortunately, there's a couple of questions. I don't have that book, so you're either going to have to read the surrounding verses for me to go into that in a bit more detail, to give you the exact answer. So I haven't read that book. But conjoined twins in this context would not be of the same gender. There would be one of each, male and female. Yeah. So this is talking about or describing the early experimentation, because people think, I suppose, that these as we would refer to, maybe divine entities, where they click their fingers and things magically sort of come into being, but that's not the case. You understand? The human form was perfected, over a significant period of time. You understand? So in the coming together, that the first manifestation was that. This would have been male and female coming together. As we see down the line here, as when we split out into two individual species, male and female, we were originally born male and female. So one female and one male, hence why a woman has two mammary glands or breasts, because it was to support one of each. You understand? So twins is how we were originally born. Obviously now most people, unless you've got twins in your more so DNA, most people have a single sex child. When you start to get above, so triplets, quadruplets, quintuplets, sextuplets, this is really not natural for human beings. That is more to do with other species like dogs. You understand? You see pigs, which is artificial life form. In that regard, littering, that's more of an animal trait. You understand? So twins, really the maximum is of human beings is twins. Anything else after that is not really naturally human traits in that regard. So twins is the max of how we give birth in that context. Any other questions? I'll give you some more detail in that, but I can't answer it, so I haven't read that book.
The next question is from Batata Munrae. Can you explain the program of Ha?
Yeah, so you want more detail, feeding the forces. So, in fact, let me jump forward to the diagram. I'm hoping I've got it in this slide set, not making it a bit easier. Okay. Your eyes is making you a bit sick. I haven't got that. I don't think I've got that slide pack here, but I'll use this diagram to explain it. So, effectively, when your soul, or as it's being described as our soul, at the point of death, overstood, it smashes like a piece of broken glass. You understand? So if you imagine having a sort of a glass board, and then at the point of death, it shattered into many different pieces based on the emotions that a person was feeling at the end. So if you look to your aura now, or somebody took a Kirlian photograph of your aura, you would see it would be a kaleidoscope of different colors based on your mood. You understand? Yeah. So your emotions based on your mood. So if obviously when we die, our emotions, in a sense, as it breaks it or shatters, understood? Yes, it is in different cars. Yeah. So when we look at our soul, for example, if we were able to zoom in, yeah. So imagine your mind, if we were able to zoom in more detail. So imagine this: if I had zoomed right into these things and I went further and further, if we were on the right type thing, you'll see this is made up of pixels, isn't it? Yeah. So smaller aspects of that. So if I zoomed in, metaphorically speaking, into what the soul appears to be, it'll be made up of different cars. So the way it's held together at the point of death, let's say that breaks. And depending on those last emotions, the cars will gravitate towards the ether level of the last emotion. So if it's a fear, a negative, then we're going to end up in the 1 to 6 ether range. If it's of an agreeable configuration, more positive vibration, then we're going to ascend to the 7, 8, and 9 ether ranges. So if you remember, when we have the balloon ceremony, when somebody dies, what do? We dress in white, and the balloon ceremony, where people take balloons, obviously, and they write a message for the person, and at the right time, we let those balloons ascend, you understand, into the air. This is what this is describing, you understand? In, I think it's actual fact, Feeding the Forces. Yeah, so it's describing all these different cars gravitating to where the person last set of emotions were when they died. So this is what the problem is with monotheistic religion. Monotheistic religion teaches the fear of death. Yeah, false education appearing real. You understand? And the finality of death. Whereas us having the ability to reincarnate 24,000 and even more times, death is just a doorway. So it's not something that should be feared of. They want you to be fearful of death so that when you're on your last set of emotions, aspects of you end up at these lower ether ranges. Do you understand? Now, if they're at 1 to 6 ether level, they will not be of your own ancestry. I'm talking about us as Nagara or Negroids. You understand? But 7, 8, and 9 ether levels will always be of our own ancestry. Do you understand? So if you imagine, some of you, depending on if you died in a fearful state, or some of you might be in a positive state. So we want to be wholly agreeable or fearless at that point of death, so that all of us ends up where it's supposed to be, not some of us down here. So this Rei Harechet or Rei Harechet or Rei Harechet is the program that basically removes our ancestral energy, or these cars that have ended up 1 to 6, and puts them back where they're supposed to be, vibrating on the 7, 8, and 9 ether level. So these are finite forms of energy. You understand? In fact, not experienced here on the physical plane, as people would understand it to date. You understand? So finite forms of energy. So there's a realignment taking place. You can see of people being born who were not in our mindset, didn't understand nothing about Wu-Sabat, had been fooled or tricked. Now you can see the kind of problem that it creates. You understand? The mess that's been created, where, as I say, some aspects of our ancestors are at this point. So the golden child of that particular family and configuration is able to draw, use their understanding or what they've been taught by this Amun Nabab Reactor, because they're able to, the Amun Nabab Reactor has knowledge of the 9 abodes. Do you understand? And can discern between them, and therefore is able to teach these golden children how to mimic, those different vibrational rates. They're able to be trained. You understand? By them mimicking that, they have the ability to draw out all of these different particles out to them, and then send them, as I say, to the right ether level where it should be, where they would be amongst, for lack of a better word, family. Understood? And not be using here in these lower realms as etheric batteries. Because remember, as we spoke about in a previous session, remember the science of religion, not the art of it, the science of religion is the key. It's the interference of the dead into the lives of the living. So 9 we know represents living, the 6 represents death. So they are seeking, as I say, to trick or fool us into powering their systems, so they can feed off of the living. the dead subsist off of the living. Do you understand? So that's what their whole system of religion is set up on. Understood? So that's what the Rei Hara Achet is designed to correct. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, there's a question from Jean. How can I help free my ancestors that may be trapped in the lower level and also free myself?
Well, the application of Wu-Sabat. Now, obviously, Partarat, the golden child, describes what, or golden children, I should say, describes what golden children are. So whether you are one of those or not, I couldn't say. Do you understand? And golden children are not supposed to be running around saying, I'm a golden child, you know, that kind of egotistical way. But it would be a golden child or golden children within, you know, that are produced that will be able to correct that. It's not something that you necessarily personally could do unless you're a golden child. But golden children per se, trained, could correct that individual. Obviously, your responsibility is to maximize your potential by developing yourself the best you can be in Wu-Sabat, you understand, in this life. And obviously, at the point of death, one would be prepared, you understand, to not, well, sometimes you can't have a choice, but you wouldn't die in a fearful state. So if you were blessed enough to reach old age, the knowledge that you are acquiring and learning, the spiritual practices that you're putting in place would mean that you're able to put yourself in a mentally positive, agreeable place, even in situations where it might be a painful death, so that, as I say, the whole part of you could ascend to where it's supposed to be. Do you understand? So obviously knowing, because if fear is false education appearing real, then the counter to fear is facts. You understand? Or knowing. You understand? Because when you know, then that would give one a modicum of peace or balance. Do you understand? So this is what we have to practice mentally to be strong in these types of situations. Say, understand that death is a doorway is one of the keys to that. So study of Wu-Sabat, application of your spiritual practices, optimizing you in Wu-Sabat, working with others to build our community once again, and our nation. These are the things that we need to be striving for. Understand? Because we know we can't do that ultimately in this environment, whether that happens in our lifetime or in our children's lifetime. That's what we need to work towards, one step at a time. Any other questions?
Yes, from Judith. So Harare Achet program automatically puts us back on 7, 8, and 9 ether, or is it a process? And what is that process?
So good question. So the process that I've described is not automatic process. It's the purpose of what those golden children are doing. So the golden children are implementing the program of Rei Hara Achet. You understand? But obviously this Yaanuwn, this special individual, Nabab is that key, what they're looking for and what they seek to destroy and stop, because of the how can I describe the ability to train individuals to fulfill this purpose. In fact, what I'll do from Feeding the Forces, I'll read the verse pertaining to this, so you can go and look it up for those who've got the book. This is verse 142, actual fact, Feeding the Forces, which is actual fact number. Down the front. For those who can do it, if you want to access it via the website or an All Egypt store, it's actual fact number 2. Right, so it says, I'm going to read from 141. It says, so 141, so those Negroids who lose their souls by submitting to Dracula are unlikely to be able to access any of it, much less to begin the gargantuan task of healing and merging these polarized aspects of the mental back with their own genes. So what you can't see from what I'm looking at here, or what it's previously describing, is what I'm talking about there, where other races, do you understand, and their religious practices were designed basically to cause you, either in life or post-death, death and beyond death, to steal your energy. So have you fueling them. And the ultimate fueling is to take advantage of the person's soul. You understand? Because what is the soul? The soul is what? The emotional aspect of you. Yes? What is emotions? Energy, emotion. You understand? So it's a battery source to fuel or for these lower forces to feed off of. Yeah, so this is what, as it's describing in 141, much less begin the gargantuan task of healing and merging these polarized aspects of the mental back with their own genes. 142. And so, Rayeh HaAchet program facilitates a race's basic purpose, that of directing its energy and the life essence out of the physical plane, where it engenders expanding consciousness and the welcoming of new diverse life experiences into the ethereal realm, in order not to feed predatory, discarnate entities and splintered, tormented spirits of a race's ancestors. Do you understand? So this is what this program is describing, how things should be. You understand? That's what it's describing, how things should be. And so therefore, if it's not that, then this is what's necessary to correct that situation as we find ourselves in today. Yeah. Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So, and you can see, as I say, in the society, it's based around, we've described this before, but in this society, as I say, it's based around the force of death. It's why when you sort of say good morning to each other, that you don't realize that the morning is MOURNING. You understand? So you're wishing each other a good death because of those forces, as say 16 forces, that feed off of or seek to feed off of 9 ether. Now, so we had this Project 24, conjoined twins, split hermaphrodites, and then, as I say, then split now into single gender beings, in the sense of neutral gender beings originally, then into single gender beings, male and female. And interesting enough, remember, a hermaphrodite has the male principle obviously inside them, and hermaphrodites are able to obviously to fertilize their own eggs, isn't it? So they can produce another female, a process called parthenogenesis. Then what happens now is that the male is now split out of, so that male principle is split out of the female and put into the being as a protector of the female, because remember, the genetic configuration of the woman, she holds the matrix. Now they look at etymology, the word matrix means womb, but they're also describing the codes of life for this planet. Understood? So anybody or any group, let's say extraterrestrials, we'll use modern day terminology, seeking to establish a genealogy here on the planet Earth would have to, do you understand, utilize the codes in that African or black woman, because she naturally was engendered or was configured with those codes for life. Very precious. Remember, the planet, it takes billions of years, obviously, if not into millions of years, to get to the it to be a life sustainable environment. And so remember, the word planet is really what? Plan ET, or extraterrestrial plan. Understood? From the seeding of life here through what they call exogenesis, or comets, intelligent comets, able to initiate life here in a suitable environment. Do you understand? Or exogenesis is one of the names for it. And so obviously the waters of this planet coming from the Orion star constellation, for example. Other comments here brought we refer to as amino acids, the building blocks of life. You understand? So that takes a long time, as we would understand time, at least here, in order to configure. So the planet is precious. Yeah, and the planet in itself, or the entity that inhouses the planet, that the Greeks refer to as Gaia, is existence. I think the Hotep describe it as saying is existence. Yeah, so the what we describe as the entity or the intelligence that runs the planet. Understood? Yes. They describe its age as being so old it's not worth mentioning. Now this is a tablet that's talked about 76 trillion years ago. You understand? But in the context of Gaia, said its age is so old in relation to human beings that's not even worth giving a number. It's pointless for our understanding. Do you understand? So that is very precious and needs to be maintained. So circling back around again, the female would have been subject to attack for those wanting basically that code, yeah, to establish life on this very fertile, energy-rich planet. So the male was separated out into a being. Hence why we say artificial insemination, as it relates to us as a human species, is the male and female relationship. Today they describe artificial insemination as obviously putting sperm in a test tube or whatever, and then mixing the ovum and the sperm in a laboratory and bringing them together to achieve conception that way. You understand? However, artificial insemination for our level of technology, yeah, Natharu level of technology, is male with a penis, female obviously with a womb, excuse me, and a vagina. When the two come together, you understand? Yeah, as they say, I think in their Bible they say about man must leave his mother, you understand, and cling on to his wife, and the two of them become one flesh. You understand? That's what they describe it in their biblical context. What that is saying is that no, we're reverting back. When we come back together, we're reverting back to our neutral gender state when male and female come together. Do you understand? So we're externally separate, but when we come together, yeah, spiritually and physically, then we become that hermaphrodite, understand, hermaphrodite, neutral gender beings once again. Understand? So the male principle has been stuck has been extracted from the female and put in a male. Understand? Not the other way around as they have it in your Bible where the woman was taken from the rib of man. No, that's not, that's part of their mythology, but it's not even scientifically correct. In order for that to have worked, Adam himself would have had, or their Adam would have had to have been a hermaphrodite. You understand? Because the woman does not have an X chromosome. You can't produce, the Y chromosome can't produce the X chromosome. Do you understand? This is why women here in this context, they don't produce males because they don't have a defective Y chromosome in their being. So they can't, you understand? They don't have it, so they can't produce it. Only clone themselves. Yeah, so that's why the two are coming together, because it's been separated out. The male was obviously given extra testosterone, size and strength to act as the protector of the female genes and be directed by the female in that regard to protect obviously our ability to produce now genealogy. Understand? Because obviously people kidnapping females, all this kind of stuff in order to get those codes, yeah, of life here. So, as I say, born twins, female and male, two mammary glands in terms of design in order to feed and produce those children. Yeah, so that's the science of us primarily in that regard. Now, 24 is quickly going over this, just so 24. So, 24,000 year cycle. This not only the scene of life here, known as, or our life form or development of our life form, known as Project 24, but this is known as District. Our solar system is known as District or Sector 24, Zone 6, for those who don't understand that. If you count, so our ancestors count outward from Neptune inwards. In this society, remember, they count this way. They always want to do the opposite, I suppose, of what the original does. So they say third rock from the sun, don't they? Yeah, but no, we count inwards. So we go Neptune 1, Uranus 2, Saturn 3, Jupiter 4, Mars 5, you understand? And then Earth then would be 6. Yeah, so sector 6, some may refer to it as zone 3, counting from the sun outwards, yeah? So Plan ET, project or sector 24, 24,000 genomes. You see the correlation there. And as you see on the screen, 24th element, chromium. So there's a planet, which is an offshoot through sunspots, offshoot of this burning ball of gas, gets trapped in the orbit over time. It's then cools in temperature, you understand? And in the cooling of that temperature, the gases that were formulated in the air also cooled and caused, in the atmosphere, caused water to be formed. When that water dropped basically into this sort of fiery core, then, I'm talking about masses of water, tremendous sort of rainfall as those gases, the outer gases, started to cool down. It caused major explosions in the core, which then have formed mountains and different things like that. So a very violent existence to start with. But the planet was extremely hot in its early development. So the early life form, in terms of our cells, needed to resist or have the ability to resist that level of heat. Do you understand? So chromium, the 24th, so not only our 24,000 genomes, but our genes coated with chromium, this 24th element, not only helping to shield from the sun, but stopping any type of degradation, or you see, degradation, or degrade. You understand? Let's say it that way. Yeah, stopping it degrading, as you see there, or corroding with this tremendous amount of heat. You understand? So you see again correlation in numbers there. In that regard, obviously linked then as to us as a carbon-based life form at 6, which I think we touched on in the last class. Yeah. So, what's that to say, and why we're talking about that? Well, it's just showing you, I suppose, very briefly, our origin in that regard. But then we break down into ethers, or what they refer to as physical ethers. Yeah, so a physical ether is a description of is a description. Excuse me, let me just right. Yeah. So it's a physical description of us as a species. Yeah. So physical ethers is describing species of human beings, you understand, within a race, understood? But the word race should really be replaced by planetary nation. Now, what you have to understand is that, and what it's explaining here from physical ethers in verse 4, is our ancestors upon authority describing, we logged by way of Khatat al-Ahachat, physical ethers, and Akak al-Achachat, mental ethers, for each humanoid creature that are each unique in their own way. So we understand, obviously, as individuals, we're uniquely placed, and we described the disk earlier and the time continuous liner. For us as individuals, we have a unique fingerprint. Each human being that's broad has that unique marker in that regard. But as a race, we sit within a race, yes? And so if you, in a similar way, if you look in your house, for example, the electromagnetic frequencies, there are protocols in place to ensure, for example, that your television works within a certain frequency range, which is different to your router in your house, different to your phone, etc. So there's worldwide protocols, you understand? If you looked at your description of your router, you might see the word describing a certain protocol. And this is because they understand around the world that you don't want your radio, for example, coming through your television. You understand? Or vice versa. So they are set within a certain frequency range. They don't interfere with each other. You understand? This is agreed protocols, agreed around the world to how electronic devices are developed. You understand? And what this is describing is in a similar fashion. So races are configured within a certain ether range. You understand? And that, as we showed the diagram earlier, also relates, for us at least, to your ether configuration of what we vibrate on as a race. You understand? And so the diagram that we were showing you earlier, I'm sorry, people see it loads of times. It's showing different races vibrating within a certain ether range. You understand? Now, when we talk about physical ethers, what that is saying is there are 9 species, you understand, or in this context, there are 9 species, you understand, or we as Negroids have 9 species within, or 9 physical ethers, or 9 species, you understand, within that ether range. And effectively, as you see in South Africa, the Sands people were the first people. The Sands people are not necessarily dark, they're not dark skinned. You understand? So, in that regard. So, within our natural, and you see the word hues there, so human being, you see hues, different hues. We go from, understand, the kind of yellow or caramel skin color to blue black. You understand? And so within our natural range or hues, we have 9 different species. The Dravidians have 7 different species within their race. The Mangalu or Mongoloids, you understand, have 3 species, you understand, within their race. And the Caucasians or the Mukasu have 6 species within their ether range. And as it's describing there, you understand? Yes. So we vibrate within a certain frequency. When our ancestors die, understood, or transition, understood, they're vibrating on a certain frequency range, which if we were able to tune into that, we will be able to communicate and in actuality even see them. Yes, because remember, we are both physical and etheric or spiritual, you understand? And so therefore can we provide a conduit for communication between the physical and the spiritual realms in that regard, you understand? So we're all separated out, vibrating on a certain unique frequency range, you understand? So individually the case, but also as a race of people, one understands that. Understand? So, as I said here, and each has to dial in on just the right, an exact station or right speed, vibration, or frequency or voice, as you're yourself, family in the spirit Tabal world, called family spirits or familiar spirits. Yes. So this has had very negative connotations because of horror movies and different things of that nature, and the religion of Wicca, which is the Caucasians' true religion manifesting itself in movies. But it's nothing to do with the horror film that they kind of profile it on. It's to do with the fact that you wasn't physical first. You understand? You were etheric being or supreme being first, obviously, who has the structure of a physical body built around the real true essence of who they are. You understand? So, but all of that, because we came from that energy state and then have lowered now into this physical environment, you understand, our vibration, those interlinks are still there. You understand? So when those gaseous states, those 9 ether gases slowed down in vibration, it manifested into a melanated, woolly haired, you understand, individual. Others with less potent gas, you understand? So 3 is a gas formula or ghostational gas formula. When they manifested or that slowed down in vibration, you get a colorless or transparent individual with straight fur, not hair. Understand? Fur. So there's less potent gases or less potency within that formula. And hence why I say 6 ether is partial destruction of original creation, because there's a change. You got 1/3 less energy, 1/3 less potency in the gaseous formula that formulates 6 ether as opposed to 9 ether. Do you understand? So all races registered on a particular range and have their own ancestors. So if you're developing a way of life, do you understand, or a religion, that way of life, you understand, should direct you to maintain or keep your link with your ancestors, you understand, your true creators. Any questions?
No questions.
I can see a hand raised. Ryan Bab, see a hand raised.
I don't see a hand raised on my computer. I don't see a hand raised.
Okay. Just checking. Should just be capturing those questions out. Any written questions? I see a few written questions.
Oh, these are ones that have been previously being answered.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I think I did see a note there. So, which I maybe didn't answer. So, 76 trillion years ago, if you had to give us an age, they talk about 76 trillion years ago. You understand? If you had to give us an age, you understand? So, as a point of its existence, but it becomes complicated when you're calculating time, because when a person says 76 trillion years ago, remember, we calculate time with the movement of our planet around the sun. Understood? So that's what constitutes a year. So that takes a serious calculation to describe 76 trillion using modern day time. But if you had to give us an age, they would say 76 trillion years ago. Sorry, I can see a hand raised.
Yeah, I've just seen it. It's just come up, raised my hand. Patsy has a hand raised. I'm going to allow you to ask your question. Just a second. Patsy, you may ask your question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for this webinar. I've been sort of in and out, so I've not heard everything, so I've had to do a few bits. But I did hear about the male out of the female. Just wondered if you could expand on that a little bit more. It's something I really want to understand. You know, why is it that the male is so aggressive, basically, towards the female? So many horror stories all over the YouTube and the internet from fathers with their own babies, girls. So I just want to understand it, please. Thank you.
No, much appreciated, and thank you for your comments. So basically, what we have to realise is that we're a step away from, I suppose, what we were originally. So originally, as I said, we were explaining, and probably get into this maybe a little bit later, if not next week, that that we were always matriarchal. So this idea of the male rulership or male leading is a biblical concept coming out of the Torah, which was birthed by, because the Torah itself and the Bible and monotheist religions are copies of the Sumerian tablets, you understand? And in these Sumerian tablets, they talk about a group of extraterrestrials referred to as the Anunnaki, you understand? Which is where Iraq is today. Now, they brought in, as I say, a more patriarchal system. And so that is where you get sort of male dominance in that regard. I don't say they didn't have powerful women in their context, but they brought in patriarchal rulership for obviously their descendants. which because they're controlling the planet today, we have leadership by way of brute force. You understand? Strength and power in that regard, and the concept that the woman is subservient to the male. Do you understand? Now, whereas in our culture, I have to poorly draw this on the screen. Whereas in our culture, it's based around, matriarchy, because that is what is based on nature. You understand? Nature does not produce the thing that that needs to be fed before the thing that does the feeding. Do you understand?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
in that context, yeah. So when you look at the X and X, which is the female, what you're simply looking at is that the Y chromosome, you take one strand off. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it before, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. So it gives you a Y. So that original aggression was there as a protecting force, because as we explained slightly before, maybe you didn't hear that part, but the woman holds the matrix, understood? So what they did in terms of the split out, they split out the male principle out of the woman and put it in a being, understood? And so
Sorry, can you hear me when I speak?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. When you say they, who you mean by they?
So we're saying they're our ancestors. So they are our spiritual ancestors. So in the design of Project 24, yeah, let's just go back to that screen. They split out. We went from hermaphrodite to single gender beings, yeah, to be split out into male and female. You understand? In actuality, if you look at how we originally formed, you get what they refer to as the daughter cell. So a single cell that then splits into two. So when you're looking at that in terms of our cellular origin, it's the same design. We're just looking at it on a larger scale. So we got split out from hermaphrodites into male and female. So the male at that point was split out as a protector. The issue is, for females and how they gave over their rulership, is because in this context, women fertilize their own eggs. Understood? So able to replicate and produce another female. Do you understand? So in this context, when we were split into male and female, she should have been able to do both. So she would use males at a certain time to reproduce, and then she could reproduce what they refer to as asexually, but it's really F-sexually, on her own without the necessity of a male. You look at the Komodo dragon, for example, as a life form. It at times uses males. It at times uses itself in order to fertilize its own eggs and fulfill its purpose of reproduction. When she gave over or stopped fertilizing her own eggs and producing other females and had to rely on the male now solely to fertilize her own eggs because she fell in love, in inverted commas, with her own creation, she gave up rulership to the male. Because she now needs the male to reproduce. Whereas that's not how it was supposed to be. Use males at certain times, use females at other times. You understand? Or reproduce on her own. So in giving up that, she gave up her rulership to males, leading eventually, many thousands of years down the line, to now males ruling, because without the male, she can't fulfill her purpose of reproduction, you understand, in terms of that's human beings. Now the male rules differently, isn't it? By brute strength. You understand? So in that regard now, where others then came in, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. Well, in fact, let me touch upon it a little bit now. You've got, later down the line now, we've got other chromosomal configurations which are not were not naturally occurring. So this DUF 1220 on the first chromosome came down a lot later. It actually relates to how the Caucasian was formulated by their ancestors. A combination of the Anunnaki, Pleiadians, another group of extraterrestrials, and the monkey, the simian. Our origin doesn't come from monkeys. We came from the stars, but also the waters of this planet. We're the original mermen and merwomen of the planet. We came out of the waters, not from monkeys. Understand?
Oh, yeah.
So the chimp, the use of the chimp and chimpanzee with the Caucasian male, or that combination, is referred to as a designer gene on chromosome 1. You understand? And if you understand or look at or study the nature of the chimpanzee, for example, they're very aggressive in nature, or can be very aggressive in nature. You understand? So the aggressiveness comes from the simian genes. Understood?
Can I say something there quickly?
Go ahead. Yes.
There's a program, a documentary on Netflix at the moment. I think it's called The Chimps or something like that.
Right.
It's about 5 episodes. It absolutely goes into the detail of how the male chimp conducts himself in comparison to the female chimp. And it really, really shows you aggression, territorial, testosterone. It really reveals it very, very well. Worth watching.
In fact, thank you. So studying that is where you see where this monkey element came from in later races or sub races, in particular Caucasian, where they now introduce that gene. Now, obviously, all the genes are mixed together now because of various different mixings. So this is why these traits now exist in some of us as well as them. Now, the issue is that in this configuration and using the monkey, it meant that their mental capacity of the male doesn't go past the age of 13. Because when you look at a chimp, they can do basic things. You understand? The difference, obviously, of chimps, is they can use their hands. This is what separates them in terms of intellect from the other animal kingdom, is that they've got a working thumb. You understand? So it can lead to more complex tools being developed. But chimps themselves don't develop their mind past the age of a 13-year-old. This is why when you look at our society today, because they're ruling, it's based on what? Sport, competition, you understand? Games, you understand? PlayStation, Xbox, and big men playing games. Then if you look in the cinema, what's the most popular genre of cinema? Movie, action movies, superhero films. It's all based on childlike thinking. Do you understand? And throughout their history, rather than being able to resolve conflict is resolved by what? Fighting or war. When you look at your children, people say, oh, children are cute. And they are cute, but they have the difficulty sharing. You understand? Because adults have to kind of jump in. Not all children, but a lot of them. That's mine. You understand? They have difficulty because their mental capacity is not developed yet to be able to resolve conflict through non-fighting means. We didn't compete. So previously, competition was not an issue for us in terms of development. So we didn't develop by way of competition. Our skills that we learned were inherent, whereas most of their skills and the technological development has arisen out of war. You understand? So we obviously medical advancement, technology, it's come out of conflict. You understand? Whereas when you're looking at us, out of Project 24, the skills were programmed into the genes from day one. So when they brought in these etheric entities, the skills were already there, programmed in, and therefore to assert themselves or to express themselves as the genes developed and adapted to the environment. You understand? So the male dominant rule over time, you understand, has shifted. So your what do you call it? 2012. They describe it as scenario is basically a long and short way of describing back to female energy on the planet, because basically every 12 to 13,000 years, the axis of the planet shifts to point towards the center of the galaxy where there's a massive black hole emanating, drawing in energy, but then it also, the axis of the planet points away. And when you get this shift or change, the energy on the planet changes. And so it's moving more back to matriarchal or towards original, how things originally were. You understand? And so the male dominance arises in our culture because women gave away or gave up her divinity in inverted commas by falling in love with the male that she created that was supposed to act as a protector of the genes, you understand? And so in doing so, she made herself subservient to males. Now, she hasn't lost that ability. It's just dormant because she doesn't use it now and has forgotten how to use it. And obviously by way of bad information through religion, she didn't even know that she even had those qualities. Hence why, you know, when the spiritual science of Wu-Sabat came around, its first job is to inform, you understand, of those skills and abilities in that regard, as I say, of what she did not know she had. You understand? So this is where the aggression comes in, is by way of the chimp, and who is ruling at the moment, obviously, is males. So male rulership is moving. Nature obviously perceives that as a problem because males are basically destroying the environment. And so that's why it's seeking me to change it back to how it should be, where things are matriarchal. So
can you explain a little bit more on the why it is that the males are going around basically raping girls, boys and babies? What is that about? Can you explain that? Or what you've just said, can you link it so I can understand this terrible thing that's going on in society that we're seeing all over the YouTube now? What is it?
Well, yeah, remember, it's not all males.
No, I know it's not all male, but it's too many.
Right, but what I'm saying
and it's really bad. So really bad, far worse than we realise.
But this is what I'm saying to you. That combination, so here, what you're seeing is two different things on the screen. You're seeing inherent skills that were programmed in both what you would describe as male energy entities and female energy entities. 9 skills were given to each set. And then as they came together, you've got people being born with, let's say, singing inherently, yeah? Ability to draw. I'm not talking about the ability to learn to draw. People can learn to draw. You're talking about people who are, their skill of drawing, they can do photorealism. Do you understand? So these are inherent skills that were programmed within the genome by our ancestors.
All right.
Right? So inherent skills programmed into the genes. When DUF 1220 came along, that is referred to as the designer gene. You understand? So the combination of these 3 groups coming together with the simian now introduces into the human genome obsessive traits. So not inherent traits, obsessive traits. So people being obsessed, you understand, with certain characteristics of their nature. Overly sex or over-sexing is part of those traits. And what you got to realize is that inherently, when you're talking about these types of things that are taking place, or that male dominance or ruling, that's because that's what they were designed to do. Yeah, and that's evidence in the Vikings. Yeah, the Vikings were designed to go and spread, you understand, the genetics and genes, obviously, of this new or artificially created gene set referred to as mankind. Yeah, the word Viking is VI, you understand, Roman numeral 6, and kings or kin is a kinsman, you understand, or 6 sets of families, do you understand, which went out there to go and spread their genes forcibly into the world, which led to a number of different sub-races being created. So that's their nature. So that's by design. That's by their God or Lord God, whatever. That is what they were designed to do. Do you understand? So that's why those traits are inherent in the certain characteristics of people. You add then these obsessive behaviors with the program of the mind, porn, which has been legalized, and things of that nature. This is driving that kind of activity, with also the disrespect, not only of the sexual process, which was previously more sacred than it is today, and also the devaluing of females, you understand, through those religious ideologies, which is leading to that inherent disrespect, or people feel, well, okay, they can take liberties, you understand. Rape is inherently within the nature of certain people unless they're programmed outwardly to not do that, you understand, called being civilized. You understand? So we were never civilized. To be civilized implies that you were once barbaric. You understand? We were civilizers. because inherently cooperation, you understand, living in communities, you understand, these are part of the traits of who we are. Others now, because of the animals that were used to make them, like, for example, the simian, also the canine, you understand? So when they talk about dog eat dog, you understand, that is the nature of that's the animalistic nature and characteristics of the animals or the genes that were used to create them. So they're only doing what they were designed to be. Religion for them was introduced to civilize them, and their extraterrestrial ancestors or gods or whatever could not control them, so they abandoned them. You understand? Because not getting into their origin in this class for today, but it's their nature that you're dealing with. And that has now become the way of the world, isn't it? Through the media. Popularized, do you understand? From a young age, the games that we're playing, all of that, remember, is a young mindset, not able to evolve past the age of 13. So if I can't get it, or you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to take it. Do you understand? So cooperation is not part of the individual nature. You see, the world is run and dominated in those characteristics. So when we talk about this DUF 1220, it's very important because of this fact of these obsessive traits, not skills. You understand? Obsessive traits in the genome now introduced, as I say, hence is referred to as a designer gene. Now, your ancient Egyptian ancestors, remember, they showed or depicted human beings in human form with animal heads and things of that nature to show the nature of the animal in man. Yeah, and the characteristics of nature. But this only came in, interestingly enough, with the Anunnaki. Us as the ancient Africans or ancient Egyptians were not putting masks of animals in terms of the depiction of our ancient ancestors. It's when the Anunnaki culture came along and the two of them fused together is where you get those characteristics of a more animal nature in man being shown in that regard. So really the start of it is by design. Do you understand? And it's really how individuals within a race, can they act civilized, or are they going to revert back to their natural nature? Do you understand? And so this is what you're seeing permeated really through the music, fashion, the television. Do you understand? Really stirring up those kind of inner natures, some of them, many of them adverse within. Because the original purpose of music was to calm the beast within man. You understand? This is one of the original purpose of music, to calm the beast within. When you're now seeing music that amplifies that, then you get a different type of nature than what we're seeing here, unless, as I say, individuals are, for lack of a better word, controlled by way of their religions. Yes, the religion was introduced to control the beast, or the beast type man, so that he would not be out of control. What you're seeing now is a merging, or what in their religion at least, you have what you call man's law in their society and God's law. You understand? So they have these two things where destruction, you understand, is considered to be legal. Yeah, destructive or self-destructive behaviors are legal. You understand? Even though those destructive behaviors are anti-nature, yeah, or in their context, anti-God. Yeah, so man's law is competing against God's law in their society and doctrine. And as I say, if rape is advantageous to them, then it's fine. If it's not advantageous to them, you understand, then that's when they consider it to be illegal. So at one time when slavery was to them considered legal, rape was fine. You understand? So that was their nature. Yeah, legalized in that context, but not against their own women in that context, but rather against other races. You understand? So there's a lot of plethora of rules and natures being played out in this context, and unfortunately, you've got a a conglomeration of that in the society today, which is seeking to destroy genes. You understand? And this is why you're seeing what you describe, or the proliferation of that, because polluting genes impacts this alignment that we were talking about earlier between a merging of us, our spiritual ancestors, and us elevating to that esoteric level where there isn't such a gap between what we're calling the physical and the spiritual. Almost the two are merged together in us, where we can communicate with our ancestors as easily as we would pick up a mobile phone. But polluting of the genes creates white noise, you understand? And like when you're tuned into a radio station and you hear shh, it's interference. Polluting of the genes creates white noise, interference of us being able to tune in, you understand, to the radio station frequency that our ancestors, and in actuality our spiritual science of Wu-Sabat, is being broadcast upon. Yeah.
That's a lot there. I think it might be worthwhile doing a whole session on this, because it's a huge problem that's going on in our society, with our babies, children, being molested and raped by their own fathers. So I think it's something that needs to be really looked at, because they're destroying a whole generation.
Yeah, understood. So I mean, what we'll do is that we're due to go into a bit more into the genes next week. So I'll just add in an additional slide, I think, to touch upon, as I say, those obsessive behaviours that came in, as I say, with the creation of this DUF 1220, or what's known as a designer gene, and why you're seeing those, I say, more so chimp, but there's other animals in there as well, but more so chimp-like behaviours, if unchecked, as I say, we'll see seemingly...
There's certainly been unchecked, because it's happening all over the place. Women don't even know that the person they're married to would do anything to their own children.
Yeah, as I say. So we'll get more into the genes and why that's an issue when we get into class next week.
Thank you for your explanation. Very good.
You're very welcome.
I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. You're very welcome. Okay, any questions then before we close out for today's session? Or any further questions?
No further questions.
Okay, so we'll continue this less of an introduction, continue this next week, so we can get into the genes as we've just started off. And as I say, we want to get into more so, it was touched upon a little bit about blood types today. So we're going to get into that and talk about the compatibility and conflict in taking place in the genes, but also, as I say, around some of these behaviors and where they stem from. So the inner desires, the inner thoughts that are coming from inside of you, that can be obviously a positive within, but also can be the enemy within also, and why that happens, as I say, and how we sort of counterbalance that at the same time as well. So appreciate everybody tuning in for today. We're back again next Sunday, same time, so the 18th, to continue this very important set of classes. So appreciate everybody's time today. Stay safe, make some positive decisions, align with your ancestors, and achieve great things. We'll see you next week. Take care all.